In the depths of the ancient South American rainforest, where sunlight barely penetrates the canopy, something moves that should not exist. Standing 8 feet tall with a beak designed to crush skulls, the terror bird has ruled these woods for millions of years. When wildfire forces a primitive tribe into its hunting grounds, nature's most perfect killing machine awakens from its slumber. What happens next will redefine the meaning of prehistoric terror. This is the story of humanity's encounter with the bird from hell. 15 million years ago, long before the ice claimed the northern continents, the world burned green and wild. In the heart of what would one day become the Amazon basin, an endless cathedral of trees stretched toward a sky that few ground-dwelling creatures would ever see. This was the Miocene epoch, a time when the earth pulsed with life so abundant and diverse that every shadow held the promise of discovery or death. The forest breathed with its own rhythm. Ancient cecropia trees rose like pillars supporting a roof of interwoven branches and vines. Ferns the size of houses created natural amphitheaters, where prehistoric dramas played out in eternal cycles of predator and prey. The air itself was thick with moisture and the constant symphony of a million creatures calling, hunting, mating, and dying in the perpetual twilight of the forest floor. This was not a world that welcomed visitors. Every plant, every insect, every drop of water carried the potential for death. Poisonous frogs advertised their lethality in brilliant colors that seemed to glow in the filtered light. Serpents longer than fallen trees waited motionless for days, their patience rewarded by the inevitable mistake of some unwary creature. Through this green hell moved a tribe of 20 souls, the last survivors of a larger group that had been decimated by disease and predators. They called themselves the Shadow Hunters for their ability to move through the forest with supernatural silence. Led by Akira, a weathered warrior whose scars told stories of battles with nightmare creatures, they had been walking for 7 moons in search of new hunting grounds. The tribe moved in formation perfected over generations. Scouts ranged ahead, reading the forest like a sacred text written in broken branches and disturbed earth. The main group followed, with warriors protecting the flanks, while elders and children remained in the protected center. At the rear, trackers ensured their passage left minimal sign for the predators that inevitably followed any group foolish enough to venture into the deep forest. Their destination was the Sacred Grove, a legendary clearing where their ancestors had once thrived before some unnamed catastrophe drove them into exile. According to stories passed down through generations, the grove contained fruit trees that bore year-round, streams that never ran dry, and caves that provided shelter from both weather and predators. The first sign came as they entered a clearing where the canopy had been torn apart by tremendous force. Ancient trees lay scattered like discarded toys, their massive trunks snapped clean through by an impact that spoke of violence beyond imagination. In the center of the devastation, pressed deep into the soft earth, was a footprint unlike anything in their collective memory. The track was nearly 3 feet long, with 3 forward-facing toes ending in claws that had gouged furrows in the hard-packed soil. But it was the depth of the impression that truly spoke of the creature's size and weight. Whatever had made this mark was easily twice the height of the tallest warrior and possessed a mass that dwarfed even the great cats that occasionally stalked their hunting parties. Yuki, the tribe's most experienced tracker, knelt beside the print with growing alarm. The edges were sharp and clean, indicating that the creature had passed this way recently, perhaps within the last day. More disturbing still were the drag marks that led away from the clearing, parallel grooves in the earth that suggested the creature had been pulling something large and heavy. But it was the smell that truly confirmed their worst fears. Carried on the humid air was a scent that triggered every primitive alarm buried in human DNA. The musk of a carnivore that had recently fed, mixed with something else, something that spoke of intelligence and malevolent purpose. This was not the simple hunger of a beast seeking its next meal, but the calculated patience of a predator that understood the art of the hunt in ways that transcended mere instinct. The attack came without warning, as such things always do in the world of apex predators. One moment, the tribe was moving through a section of forest where the trees grew so close together that they had to travel single file. The next, the canopy above them exploded in a shower of leaves and broken branches as something massive descended from the heights with the speed and precision of a falling boulder. The terror bird, Forus racidae in the language of science that would not exist for millions of years, stood revealed in all its prehistoric magnificence. 8 feet of pure killing machine, it possessed a body designed by evolution for a single purpose: the efficient destruction of life. Its head, nearly 3 feet long and dominated by a beak that could crush bone like eggshell, swiveled with reptilian precision as it surveyed the scattered humans below. The creature's eyes were perhaps the most terrifying aspect of its appearance. Unlike the simple hunger found in the gaze of most predators, these orbs held an intelligence that was both alien and unmistakably malevolent. This was not a beast that killed from necessity alone, but a creature that had learned to take pleasure in the act of destruction. The tribe's formation dissolved into chaos as warriors scrambled for weapons while trying to shield the vulnerable members of their group. Akira, drawing on decades of experience fighting creatures that existed only in humanity's darkest nightmares, raised his obsidian-tipped spear and positioned himself between the terror bird and his people. The bird's response was swift and decisive. With a movement too fast for the human eye to follow, it struck with its massive beak, the blow missing Akira's head by mere inches and instead shattering the spear shaft like kindling. The warrior rolled desperately to one side as talons the size of daggers raked the ground where he had been standing. The terror bird's first strike shattered more than Akira's spear. It destroyed the tribe's illusion of safety in their ancient forest home. As the massive predator pivoted with surprising grace for its size, its intelligent eyes fixed on Yuki, who was desperately trying to shepherd the children toward the relative safety of a cluster of massive tree roots. The creature's hunting strategy became horrifyingly clear as it began to systematically separate the tribe members, using its superior speed and reach to prevent them from forming any coordinated defense. Each calculated movement drove another wedge between the humans, isolating individuals who would be easier to dispatch. This was not the mindless aggression of a simple predator, but the methodical approach of an apex hunter that had perfected its techniques over millions of years. Kenji, one of the younger warriors, attempted to flank the beast while it focused on Akira. His obsidian blade found its mark, slicing across the terror bird's leg and drawing a line of dark blood. But the wound only seemed to enrage the creature further. With a sound that was part shriek and part roar, it spun toward its attacker with terrifying speed, its massive beak snapping shut inches from Kenji's face as he threw himself backward into the undergrowth. The forest itself began to betray the fleeing humans. Vines caught at their feet, thorns tore at their skin, and the uneven ground that they had navigated so carefully in better times now became a maze of potential death traps. Behind them, the terror bird's pursuit was relentless, its powerful legs carrying it through obstacles that would have stopped any other creature of its size. As the chase continued deeper into the forest, a new horror revealed itself. The acrid smell of smoke began to filter through the humid air, followed by the distant crackle of flames consuming dry vegetation. Somewhere ahead of them, the forest was burning, and the wind was driving the fire directly toward their position. The wildfire had been burning for days, feeding on the drought-dried undergrowth and spreading with the inexorable patience of a natural disaster. Now, it roared toward them through the forest canopy, turning the green cathedral into a hellscape of smoke and flame. The tribe could hear the fires approach long before they could see it. The snap and crash of burning trees, the hiss of sap boiling in superheated bark, and underneath it all the deep rumble of a force that recognized no authority save its own hunger for fuel. Trapped between the advancing flames and the terror bird's relentless pursuit, Akira made a decision that would either save his people or doom them all. Instead of continuing their flight towards certain death in the fire, he led the tribe in a desperate gambit, directly toward a section of forest where the flames had already passed, leaving behind a landscape of ash and smoldering stumps. The terror bird, driven by predatory instinct and perhaps confused by the smoke that was beginning to fill the air, followed them into this hellscape. But the creature's intelligence, which had made it such an effective hunter, now became a liability. As the smoke thickened and the heat intensified, the bird began to show signs of distress. its movements becoming less coordinated as it struggled to breathe the superheated air. The tribe used this momentary advantage to reach a section of the forest where a stream had created a natural firebreak. The water was shallow but wide enough to provide some protection from both the flames and their pursuer. As they splashed across the rocky streambed, several of the warriors turned to make their final stand, knowing that someone had to delay the terror bird long enough for the others to escape. But nature had one more surprise in store. As the fire reached the area where they had been fighting, it encountered a grove of trees whose sap was particularly flammable. The resulting explosion of flame and superheated gas created a wall of fire that even the terror bird could not cross. The tribe emerged from their ordeal forever changed. Of the 20 souls who had entered the terror bird's domain, only 15 remained. The missing included 2 of their most experienced hunters and, most tragically, 3 children who had been separated from the group during the chaotic flight through the burning forest. Their bodies were never found, claimed by either the flames or the creature that had driven them into this nightmare. Those who survived bore more than physical scars. The encounter with the terror bird had shattered their understanding of their place in the natural order. They had always known that the forest was dangerous, but they had believed that their knowledge and skills were sufficient to keep them safe. Now they understood that there were forces in the world that transcended human comprehension. As they continued their journey toward the sacred grove, the survivors moved with a new awareness of their vulnerability. Every shadow could conceal a predator, every sound might herald their doom. The confidence that had carried them through countless previous dangers had been replaced by a hypervigilance that would mark them for the rest of their lives. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the knowledge that the terror bird was still out there, somewhere in the vast expanse of the primordial forest. The fire had separated them temporarily, but such creatures were patient hunters, capable of tracking their prey across vast distances and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Behind them, the forest burned on, consuming the ancient trees and the countless creatures that called them home. But from the ashes, new growth would eventually emerge, and with it, new opportunities for both predator and prey. The terror bird would find other hunting grounds, other victims to stalk through the green shadows of the prehistoric world. The sacred grove, if it existed at all, still lay somewhere ahead, beyond more forests, more dangers, and more encounters with creatures that time would eventually forget. But the 15 survivors would carry with them forever the memory of yellow eyes watching from the shadows, and the knowledge that some hunts never truly end.